It's the Tjpw Show with your host, James Tjpw.
Hello, and welcome to the Tjpw Show. We're recording on Discord. We're not allowed to speak very loud with kids as well. My name's James Tjpw. This is the Tjpw Show, and today we are going to look at an alternative product on a day that brings us the news that this week's SmackDown scored a rating of 0.33 on Cage Match. Later improved to 0.56 and listed as the third worst television wrestling show of all time. People are yearning for something new, something different. And as it happens, a couple of weeks ago, there was a tour from Tokyo Joshi Pro Wrestling, a company we are fond of on this show. And to join me to discuss that show is a man who'd never seen TJPW before, because I wanted a fresh angle on Tokyo Joshi Pro. And that's Mr. Marcus Green of Baton Rouge, Louisiana. How are you doing, sir?
Good, glad to be back. You know, James can always kind of count on me to kind of jump head first into something off one of his recommendations because as you know, I trust his acumen and his opinion on stuff, particularly when it comes to wrestling. So yeah, this was another new venture for me, but one that turned out doggone good.
There you go, you see. We did pay to have an open mind. Tokyo Joshi Pro is an offshoot company of DDT. We have looked at them many times before on the Tjpw Show, usually around their big shows, the Princess of Prince show, which is just finished, which was this weekend. We're a couple of weeks behind. But I wanted to do these shows for a very specific reason. These shows were part of their Texas Stampede tour, which started at South by Southwest in Austin, Texas, and went to Dallas and went to Houston. And the reason why I wanted to show these shows is because they're a good example of showing wrestling to a new audience. And now I don't even mean a new wrestling audience, because quite clearly there was lots of people in this audience who'd never been to a pro wrestling match before. It was a completely new audience. And you have to introduce wrestling to them, and then you have to introduce your particular style of wrestling to them. So I was intrigued as how they would go about that. And like I said, usually the way the Tjpw Show works, we tend to have someone who knows what they're talking about and someone who doesn't. And no offense, Marcus, you know an awful lot about professional wrestling and have been a professional wrestling commentator for a long period of time. But Tokyo Joshi Pro is not your bag. Had you heard of them before, apart from me and Christy going, they're awesome?
Yeah, that sparingly here and there, and I had seen some stuff. Thankfully, there is such an abundance in this day and time of both American female wrestling and Joshi wrestling that sometimes things kind of get lost in translation. But uh, not nothing that was completely new to me because obviously we've been extensively covering and girls and Marigold. So and oftentimes we talk about I end up enjoying the Joshi shows more than all the stuff with the guys. So um, yeah, TJP was relatively new, but like I said, I always appreciate this stuff, and because Wrestle Universe is this literal cornucopia uh, of all this great stuff in one hub. You know, this is just another one of those like great discoveries behind Marigold and Girls for me. So yeah, hell of a
Yeah.
offshoot.
It's a wonderful, these two shows actually, there's 4 shows to watch in the whole tour. We picked the first one and the last one to see how things had developed, and then they were in 2 different venues as well. Vader Scott was on commentary, and another gentleman who never said his name, which was unfortunate. I never got his name. He was very good. I liked him. So if anyone could help us out with that, because it just didn't appear at the beginning of the shows, and they should have done that kind of like as the head up at the first match. Hi, my name is. I like Eminem. However, they did not. But Vader Scott is always good value for money. She's a fantastic commentator. So this was right up our street for this. And we start at the Palmer Event Center in Austin, Texas, at South by Southwest. Palmer Event Center, I have been to. Haha. I had one of the nights of my life at the Palmer Event Center when it was the Austin Music Awards. And I walked in the building, and the first thing I saw was Pete Townsend of The Who windmilling a Les Paul on stage and giving this massive chord out. And it was like, oh, I am in the right place. And
Oh wow.
There was a tribute to Clifford Antone with W.C. Clark and Jimmy Vaughan and the Total World Band playing. It was an incredible night of music. John Mayer was there as well. It was fantastic, just absolutely insane night. Because it's South by Southwest, and this is the kind of stuff that happens at South by Southwest. 2 days later, I was in the cafe at the conference center in the city center having breakfast, and this lady sat next to me and said, "Were you at Stubbs last night?" And I was like, "No, why?" Metallica played Stubbs last night, and I was like, "Really?" Yeah, they were advertising the new Guitar Hero. Let's tell you how long ago it was. It was the Guitar Hero 3, I think. So South by Southwest is an absolute cornucopia, as favorite word today. Thank you for putting them back in my head, Marcus. Um, of everything, like not just music. It's a film festival. It's a online festival. It's a music festival, and it takes over Austin for 2 weeks and puts about $250,000 into the economy of Southwest Texas. And it's a great place to run a wrestling show, and the Palmer Center is a great place to run it. Palmer Center is also the home to the not rollerblading, roller derby in Texas. Texas roller derby is a long-standing tradition, and is one of the Austin's the capital of roller derby in the US, really, and so wrestling kind of fits in there hand in glove. So Tokyo Joshi Pro did a show at the Palmer Event Center, 1,951 in attendance, which is a really big crowd. Now, if it was part of the South by Southwest stuff, the odds are not all of that. All of those people would have paid for their delegates tickets, so they may be getting in for not free. It costs about 750 quid, about $1,000 to get a delegate's ticket, but they would have access to everything that goes on at official South by Southwest events. I'm not sure how quite that was laid out, but that's a pretty big crowd. And the show began with Suzume defeating Yuta Takama 6 minutes and 12 seconds brilliantly with a gentleman, a sergeant, if you will, from the Travis County Sheriff's Department directly in front of the hard cam. So all we saw was the back of his head. Thankfully, he moved. But yes, what did you think of this one, Marcus? Oh, actually, before you saw that, you got to see the Up Up Girls. Did you watch the Up Up Girls?
Yeah, I did.
PW shows.
Yeah, I did. This was an interesting way to kick off the show, which became because obviously we previously covered Glee, and they had their way of always appreciated their ceremony. They kind of opened the ceremony with they kind of showed the roster off and uh, just kind of felt the presentation. This is an interesting way to do it because this is a mix of this is your typical I would imagine your Joshi audience. Obviously, they're in Austin, they're in the States, and
Yeah.
obviously these are wrestling fans. They wouldn't be here, but you like you said, this is some of these fans are getting introduced to this for the first time. So I did like the fact that they did feel like they were open minded to everything.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
they did, and this is another instance where we don't shy away from this here the True Finish show either. This kind of had you a variety show, in a
Exactly.
way, a bit of everything. So you know,
Yeah, I mean, we talked about the Up Up Girls before on the show. They are a genuine J-pop band. They're the sister group to Up Up Girls Kakokari. I'll get it pronounced right. And they are Up Up Girls Pro Wrest. And there's usually a cycle of wrestlers who are in Up Up Girls because of the nature of how wrestling works. Pro wrestling works. People retire and move on. So we saw the current lineup of the Up Up Girls singing their current single. And this is part of TJPW's kind of makeup. A lot of the women who wrestle for TJPW started off in the idol system. Maki Ito is probably the most famous TJPW idol wrestler who now works for Stardom, has worked for AEW as well. And the idol kind of status of a lot of these wrestlers push the company a bit more towards entertainment, but also they have some serious people. A lot of those idols actually turn out to be really good wrestlers because they're used to the system. They're used to the media side of the system. And one thing I find about TJPW is it's so well presented because everybody's on the same page. Everybody's kind of like moving in the same direction. You haven't got people going into business for themselves because the business is TJPW. Now there are big stars in TJPW, but do you see what I mean, Marcus? Does it feel like a whole product?
Yeah, it does. It does kind of seem. It definitely seems like they know who they are. They know everybody knows who they are. They know what they're good at, what they don't. This person does this. This person does that. They're more comedy. I'm not. Type of deal. Um,
Mhm.
and it just felt, like I said, I was new to it, but it did feel like stuff was smooth. Sometimes when um these, I guess you call it, foreign shows coming to these situations, these venues, it can kind of throw off um their innateness, if you will, the thing that kind of makes them special where they at.
Yeah.
It didn't feel like it threw TJPW off.
No.
It felt like, and part of that is collaboration with the crowd too, because like I said, they were open minded to everything. They
Mhm.
participated. It didn't feel like TJP was kind of just playing to themselves, and
Yeah.
you need that. Because a lot of times you won't necessarily get that. Sometimes you will have people come to these shows, um, and kind of hate watching person, which you hate to think about, but it's kind of just the state of things sometimes. But it didn't feel like that.
No, I think so as well. Everyone seemed to be having a good time and were there to have a good time, which helps.
Yeah.
Um, Opening match was Suzume and Yuta Takami. This was 6 minutes and 12 seconds. This was kind of a nice ease yourself into the show kind of wrestling. Suzume, all action wrestler. Yuta Takami is very good as well. Um, I think Suzume kind of showcases what TJPW is about in the sense of she's a very happy, lucky wrestler and pulls along the crowd with her. And also, I think as well, you kind of get where we're at in TJPW because there isn't really heels and faces in TJPW. There's wrestlers and rivalries, and it's a different kind of wrestling. There isn't any units in TJPW. There aren't any heels really in TJPW. There are slightly darker characters and there are slightly lighter characters, but everyone's there to be competitive and have a good time is the general way of things. So it's not as in your face bad guy good guy, which again for an audience that's brought up on mainstream American wrestling, that's a bit of a change, isn't it, Marcus?
Yeah, it is, and I kind of felt like that. Even though it did feel like it is also little stuff that you could follow along with, like stories like with Kuzume, and obviously, immensely helped by commentary. Shout out to Vader Scott and like you said, the young man that didn't want to identify himself. Um, because all those things play into it too, particularly for a first time viewing audience online.
Mm,
Um, so appreciated that, but also I think to your point, what you said about kind of keeping things kind of loose and not necessarily having defined things like heels and faces and factions. I also that played to me too for the style of wrestling that they do.
mm,
Um, because nothing like it ain't these big crazy moves or stuff that you'll normally see, where it's like, oh, this deeply impactful finisher. Like, no, it's moves that that you're used to, but it's not like I don't see anybody doing anything where I have to look away or I have to like wince at
no, isn't.
anything like that. It's very I think smooth style, if you will, and I think that plays good for a lot of performers that come through there that aren't necessarily your typical Joshi performers, which I think we'll get to when we talk about a particular tag team later. But yeah, it just they very much know what they do, and they don't try to go under it, go under the rope, if you will, or go over the rope. They kind of just do their thing, and if you're used to that constant smash mouth style, and if I wasn't so open minded, I feel like I judged it harshly because of that.
Mm,
But you kind of have to be open minded because nobody they're not gonna be doing crazy sunset flip pile drivers on the apron here
no.
and get to that point if they needed to, but I just don't feel like that's the gear that they care to do. And like I said, I think for me, just being able to have open mind and be able to separate things. Okay, you might see a more stiffer interaction in something like Send Out Girls of Marigold, but that's not what they do. And just
No.
because that's just not what they do, that doesn't mean that it's not equally as effective in terms of quality. So, sitting here looking at who is this, like somebody like we're about to talk about, like Sakura Hattori, stuff like
Yeah.
that. Paying paying more attention to the character work,
Mhm.
is where you can really appreciate stuff here.
Yeah, I think so. I think they do a good job of setting expectations. I used to talk about this a lot with Shikara, as much as things ended badly with Shikara. Their ability to set a universe and keep the rules within that universe. No one thought it odd was an intergender wrestling company when Shikara was an intergender wrestling company because it was about wrestling. It wasn't about violence. It wasn't people getting beat up on TV. It was people out wrestling each other on TV, and they were very careful about keeping that strictly in its place. Um, it's like, but I needed to sneeze there. And I
Bless
think
you.
TJPW does. Thank you. I think TJPW does a very good job of that in the sense of you're right. It's not as stiff as say Sendai Girls, but it's never. You don't expect it to be either. There are some
Yeah,
stiff moments and some stiff wrestlers in the company, but they're not like it's not Chihiro Hashimoto and Josh Chisako knocking 7 bells out over the world championship because that's the style you expect, right? They've set an expectation that it's going to be blood and guts and heroicism and all of these things that we love. But this company doesn't do that. They do the same thing in a different way, and therefore they've set expectations, and therefore you're not going to be disappointed by what you see.
exactly.
We haven't talked about this opening match. We talked very much about the universe of the company. What did you think of this opener?
No, I dug it. I thought it was a good opener. Like I said, like you said, not too extensive, but it didn't need to be. Kind of like you said, you get the opening, singing introduction, and then we get off into a match like this. And like I said, um, somebody like Suzume, is somebody you can follow along with because she, not the biggest or anything like that, but she is, has her own unique style. And like I said, being able to go through a match and kind of dial back on the expectations of being so used to finishing with this crazy big spectacle type thing. Like, no, catch your opponent off guard and catch him with a crossbody, and you just 3 seconds again is all you really need to get to
Yep,
get to get the job done. So I definitely appreciated that, and then like I said, she feels like she has a story going throughout all this event. Because they're all titles and people to beat. With rivalry. So
absolutely. This is the thing. It is kind of, it's very much like AJW was in the 1980s. Obviously, Crush Girls and Idols, and that started with AJW in the 80s and the lovely Angels. Back in the 70s, really. So it's very much from like that point of view, but no one's going to sacrifice a chicken at a press conference.
yeah,
Ella Matsumoto. It's much more kind of intense personal relationship storytelling and how people interact with each other, which is exactly what's happening in the next match. Um, Sakura Hattori makes her re-debut. Originally brought to the company as Kaya Tarabami, she had a change of heart, a change of name, and a change of direction, and become much more of a fighter rather than a entertainer. Which is always kind of like the classic Joshi pick to me. And she's wrestling a long-time rival in Shino Suzuki. 8 minutes and 54 seconds. Hattori also produces a very vicious chokehold finisher, um, which gives her a bit of an edge in comparison to her contemporaries. I like this a lot. It probably wasn't the neatest of classical professional wrestling matches, but when you're trying to present a new style, you've got to kind of do things in a different way. So I think that would probably have the rough edges knocked off in a tour or two. What did you think of this one, Marcus?
yeah, I liked it. Like I said, she immediately caught my eye. Obviously, I'm not used to seeing women wrestle in masks. Um, in that regard, that's usually a part of the gear of the entrance and whatnot. But like you said, she's presenting herself as a different character. I don't know exactly how she moved or what she did in terms of her move set before. But
Mm.
obviously, like you said, she's playing into a more darker vibe, um, more intentionality in terms of what she's doing to her opponents. And that front almost cobra that she does is definitely effective and may yield to some goals in the not too distant future. So, uh, I don't know how fresh this is for her, but she, you know, when you get into a character like this, you got to keep it consistent. So, looking forward to seeing what she does. But yeah, she's definitely gonna be fun to watch.
Absolutely. Next up was a match where I was watching and I'm going, oh, this is where the wheels might come off for Marcus. Pom Harajuku and Raku defeated Misao and Mifu Ashida 10 minutes 25 seconds. So if you've not watched TJPW before, Pom Harajuku is a 20-year-old wrestler playing a 4-year-old. That's her character. She screams a lot, like a 4-year-old. She has tantrums because that's what 4-year-olds do, right? Raku has the glorious tactic of bringing a pillow to the ring to her, the most comfiest and loveliest of all pillows that her opponents suddenly want to use and have her lay down. And then as they fall asleep, she pins them. That's her thing. That's what she does. Hyper Misao, who believes she's a superhero but actually is a supervillain, and is kind of supposed to be evil but really isn't because she's rubbish at being a supervillain. Tagging with Mifu Ashida, who is a cheerleader, a retired cheer dance leader or cheer dance person. So yeah, and as you can imagine, all of those shenanigans because Ashida also uses the pom poms during the matches to help her guide her kicks. I was thinking, oh, Marcus is gonna hate me for this because it's not your thing at all. But I'm intrigued as to be the reaction. Please don't hate me. What did you think of this one, Marcus?
Wasn't necessarily my thing. To your point, but like I said, you take the with these shows, you gotta take the crookeds with the straights. Not everything is gonna be um crazy. In your face, straight up and down mad wrestling. Like I said, it's a variety show. These people on this show know who they are. It doesn't feel like to your earlier point about it's very much a defined company. Everybody knows their place and their roles. It doesn't feel like people are bleeding into each other character-wise or moveset or anything like that. And like you said, this particular combination of what Hyper Masala and Fu,
Yeah.
or am I getting it mixed up with Raku, like you said, the pillow curl and Miss Pom Poms, um,
Yeah, if
certainly
she
make
was
things
with the pom poms, Pom is the one named Pom.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, obviously. So, like I said, not necessarily my speed because a lot of times that stuff just kind of interrupts the energy of the match. Or when you're in
Yeah.
the middle of a high tag, and then like, oh, this is a time for a nap. Like, okay, it's, it's So, but other than that, like I said, it's fine. Because this is the character portion of it.
Yeah.
What comes into play. Obviously, you're gonna have your wrestling, but this is the character portion. It also comes into play with the pacing. You kick it off with the two singles,
Yep.
and you kind of transition into more serious stuff down the road. I thought they did that good as well. So
Yeah, absolutely. And someone posted on Blue Sky this morning, and it's absolutely true. You can't be a good comedy wrestler without being a good wrestler first, because like the whole point of matches like this is to disrupt expectations. So if you don't meet expectation to start with, you're never going to disrupt it, are you? Some of the best comedy tag teams and wrestlers I've ever seen were absolutely the best pro wrestlers. The Royal Brothers are my favorite point into existence. You go back and listen. Me and John did a Life and Times on the Royal Brothers a long time ago. And you look at those matches now, and they were just mad, absolutely off the page, crazy matches. But they understood wrestling to the nth degree, and that's the reason why it worked. And that's the reason why this stuff works, is because you absolutely believe that Hyper Misao is a superhero because she believes that she's a superhero. So why wouldn't she be a superhero? And what kind of silly talk would it be that she's not a superhero? Of course she is, because you buy into it. That's the whole point, right? The whole
yeah,
point of pro wrestling is to make you suspend belief.
to that point, real quick. I know this is briefly off topic, but to this day, still, how much, from your opinion, from your point perspective, is that still ironically enough not the prevailing thought when people talk about somebody like Yano?
Yeah, Yano's an interesting one because you know He's a genuine badass. He was like Japanese amateur wrestler. He was on, I think he was on the Japanese Olympic team. He's a genuine hardcore guy. You go back to um, the most violent players tag team with him and Togi Makabe. They were vicious. But Yano, I can understand people's dislike of Yano because he has become a one-trick pony. But equally, if he didn't understand how wrestling works to such a degree that it just wouldn't work at all, right? It just doesn't work. And I think that's what a lot of people are finding out about Evil as well, is because Evil understood wrestling so well, that's why the House of Torture worked for a Japanese audience. Not my cup of tea, and I've moaned about it constantly. But equally, because Evil knew how wrestling worked, he could subvert it in a way that was entertaining that the fans got. Now Evil's gone, the House of Torture aren't quite so popular as they once was, if you see what I mean. They're not quite so entertaining. Now it's just dark guys doing dark things, and there's no evil laugh at the end.
Mhm.
And Yano's kind of in that same kind of point, is like it only works when he's winning, but we don't see Yano winning very often anymore. So therefore he's just, well, what's he doing around here now? So it's difficult. Yano's no longer a main part of the show, and it's kind of like he's been eased out to an extent because he's got a front office job now. But again, he wouldn't have a front office job if he didn't understand how pro wrestling worked exceptionally well. We
Yeah,
moan about Rocky Romero as well, but equally, his understanding of professional wrestling, it means he's a perfect pick for a front office job at AEW and New Japan Pro Wrestling.
yeah, and he's also like a 5'2" player,
Mm.
in some ways because he can very much do the comedy aspect, very much do the wrestling aspect. You can also put him on commentary, and then, like you said, doing stuff, um, behind the scenes in the business part of it as well. So you can, you're really
Yeah,
valuable in that way. And I think,
yeah,
just finishing off on the comedy aspect is interesting because you talk about these women here, like, Palm and Hyper Misao, and then look at Yano, and then now people are seeming to be tuning up to somebody like Danhausen, showing you that there are levels to the comedy aspect of this art form that do work,
yeah.
in so many different instances. Yeah.
Someone else on Blue Sky today pointed out he believes that Crazy Mike might be the greatest wrestler in the world. And I don't think he's wrong in that statement. Crazy Mike gets a Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling or a Mystery Wrestling crowd absolutely mental, off the edge of their seats, roaring and screaming for a body slam. What's greater than that? Because they believe in him. They believe he's Crazy Mike and he will do the crazy things. And when he stands up there and says, "Who wants to see a body slam?" Everybody wants to see a body slam. Of course they do. Because he's awesome, right? And he is absolutely the living definition of getting the most action out of the least effort. And that doesn't work unless you know how to be a professional wrestler to an exceptionally high level. Um, and everyone wants to see a body slam, right? When Mike says, "Do you want to see a body slam?" How would you not want to see a body slam? Because it's Mike, and that's the way it goes. And I think people are starting to see the respect. Danhausen's another example. He wasn't really understood in AEW. And to an extent, WWE have got it. It's like he's not a great wrestler. He's not going to be a good producer, great and wonderful matches. That's not the point. He's there
Yeah.
to throw curses and do things, and he will sell you T-shirts from now until next Sunday. And by the look of things, by gum, they could do with selling some T-shirts. So yes, well,
Yeah.
that's yeah, it's a skill set.
Yeah, it's also speaking like, I guess, the great divide between the goods, the greats, and the future legends. Because it's not too often you see too many people that can have a crowd eating out of their hand, and then they do the big move. But then you have people like that can have, because a lot of times nowadays it's like they can only feel like they had a crowd eating out of their hand if they doing the big move.
Yeah,
Most people, the greatest of them have the crowd eating out of their hand, and then they can do any move. A
yeah,
lot of people just can't blend that, that ability of control of the crowd, and then blend it into the showmanship aspect of it, and then get to the move. So, I think that's why, somebody like The Rock was so
Mm.
good because it's like he doing it's an elbow, but it's the
Yeah,
theatrics, it's the waiting, it's the all aspects of it. Like the people's
yeah,
elbow, I think is a perfect example of that. Most people out and it's just the state of things now. They have to do just all this stuff, and at most, if they get the crowd on their side, it's because they got catchy theme music now,
yeah,
and it's not. Some people find that sweet spot early. Some people come into it in certain aspects if they're doing certain characters, and then certain people it just takes time as they get older. They in the business, but it's not too many people that consistently have stuff like that.
yeah. And it's having the heels to react to it because that's the other issue is heels have to show their ass, and if they're not heels, if you don't, right? You've got to. That's the job. And there are so very few heels that want to do that nowadays because they're eyeing up the babyface turn or they're trying to be cool. And it's like, yeah, but you've got to shove your comeuppance. Otherwise, people won't keep watching. Doesn't have to be every week, can be every once in a while. And the absolute perfect comedy spot I ever saw, I've talked about it a lot before, I'll do it again, no doubt, in the future, is there's a match in 1973, and it's Leon Harris, Brian Glover from Barnsley, wrestling Les Kellett, right? And Brian's got a leg lock on, and Les has a leg free. So he lifts his leg up and bangs his calf into the middle of Brian's forehead. And Brian just goes, "You need that bugger all night, boy, you'll not shift me." And he does it again. And Brian goes, "You can hit that bugger all night, boy, you'll not shift me." And the third time, Les reaches up and just says, "You can hit that," and he bangs his jaw shut on his tongue. He let go, referee! And that's it. That's comedy wrestling perfectly done and the perfect example. You talk to comedians and drama people, comedy works in threes. Did it twice, the third time is the fans are expecting it to happen, right? At that point, the fans know it's going to happen and they laugh along because it's right. And it's the perfect comedy spot. And that took no effort, no bumps, no bumps. Brian was on his knees and Les was on his back. And Brian took a couple of kicks to the face, but they weren't very hard. And that's, that's how wrestling, that's perfection of wrestling. That's it, right? That's, if the heel's willing to sell for the babyface doing the bit, it's all gone. Don't hurt anyone, doesn't cost anyone, doesn't make a babyface look stupid, doesn't make a heel look bad because heels are supposed to look bad, and that's fine. But we miss that now, I think, a lot of the time because heels aren't always as heelish as they need to be, or are too heelish, or are, it's finding that sweet spot. MJF's a good example. He can be massively overbearing at times as well, but equally, that's kind of the point. I don't watch enough AEW to see if he drove me nuts or not.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
he's got it, right. He gets it. The point is, I have to be awful, but I will get my comeuppance one day because he will, and that's what makes you want to watch somebody kick his ass, right? That's the whole point.
yeah,
And we don't get that.
yeah. And I think, ironically enough, this is my, because I've always understood the necessity for MJF, but I haven't always liked watching him because, to your point,
Mm,
there was just like he can just be overbearing at times
yeah,
with the cursing and the innuendos and just all the MJF of it all. But I feel like as he's progressed, I feel like he's found his sweet spot now where he feels like the mature guy uh, that can that has the responsibility that he has, but he's found the sweet spot of hitting exactly what he needs to do as a heel without the overbearingness of it
yeah.
at this
That's
stage. Yeah.
Bobby Heenan is probably the best mainstream example of how you get over as a comedy heel, or in comedy and use comedy to your advantage. And it was because he was willing to do stupid stuff. It's really that
Yeah.
simple. He's willing to have, like, you can go see them. He's willing to have ball and chain matches with Jake Roberts or wherever they were in the like 90s. He was willing to take ridiculous bumps off of aprons to do all sorts of things. And because Bobby understood the business, and he didn't wrestle for that long because the promoter said, "You're too good. You don't need to be a wrestler. You need to be terrible at wrestling." right? You need to be winding people up because that's your talent. And he had a much longer career than most people had because he just wound people up and he knew how to weaponize that into commentary and matchmaking and all of the things he did in pro wrestling. So there we are. We went a long way around to this. It's a good segue, this one. I like this one. Can we
Yeah,
move on to the next match?
we shall.
We shall. This was much more up your street. Mizuku and Yuki Aino went up against Arisa Endo and Miyu Yamashita, the Pink Striker, 13 minutes and 53 seconds. The ace of the company and her long-term tag team partner. Slowly running out of tag team partners because Maki Ito was her long-term tag team partner. She left the company last year. So now she's on with Arisa Endo, still kicking ass and taking names and working her way back to the Princess of Princess Championship. She has had an astounding year. She keeps going off and does excursions towards the later end of the year. So she had some time in AEW and Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling with Scott D'Amore, learning all as she goes all the time, but still kind of the big star of the company. Miyu Watanabe is the current Princess of Princess champion, who is by no means not overshadowed by Yamashita, but she's kind of the story of the company. And she's always looming.
Yeah.
She's always there, and she's always ready to kick your head off, and that's what I love about her. Endo's fantastic as well, as is Mizuki, and I love all four of these wrestlers, and this was a fantastic match. 13 minutes and 53 seconds. I think this showcases like the full-on wrestling style of TJPW and how it can have just as compelling matches without the violence of other companies. What do
Mhm.
you think?
Oh, this is a sweet spot for me. Like you said, this was no, just like the got down to the bare bones. The business end of things is the JR would say business picked up for me here.
Mhm.
This was just good. It had all the stuff. You had the outside elements. You had the very much the clear personalities, but it just really got down to the business of the physicality. I'm gonna let that do the talking for the match, which I appreciated. You got the fans involved in it. You just had a little bit of everything, but the energy stayed constant. So definitely appreciated that. Like you said, these four women are great. Um, Together, and they all right. This could have easily been like a four way and would have just been equally as good. So
Mhm.
kudos to these women and you know they clearly gonna be constant across the show, and it's gonna be interesting watching them going forward. But yeah, like you said, I think this got to down to the meat and potatoes, and like you said, really getting into the quality of what this roster has to offer.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, this kind of quality of match is kind of like the standard of main events that you get with TJPW. So it didn't surprise me that these four people would produce, definitely. Semi-main event time, the Inspiration making their Tokyo Joshi Pro debut. And there was a lot of like big stuff going on this show, but obviously they had a massive crowd for it, so it was worthwhile doing. Cassie Lee and Jessie Mackay. If there was one American tag team that were made for Tokyo Joshi Pro, I couldn't think of any two better than
Took
Cassie
the
Lee and Jessie.
words right out of my mouth.
Yeah, for the reasons we just said, because they get it. They're heels who are willing to show their ass, right? That's kind of the point, and they don't mind the humiliation. It's kind of what they've been doing for the last 10 years, and they're made for this. They went up against Shoki Nakajima, long-term veteran of TJPW, big kaiju, because of course she's the shortest person on the roster, so she thinks she's a big monster. Because of course that's kind of how it worked. And her partner Wakana Iohara, 10 minutes and 15 seconds. Iohara the least experienced in this match, and unsurprisingly the one that took the pinfall. But the Inspiration are just like, this is tailor made for them to have fun and make money, isn't it, Marcus?
Yeah, it's hilarious that they're called an inspiration because I've never really been inspired watching them.
No.
Um, yeah, they just not my cup of tea. I'm sure they're wonderful young ladies, and I want them to have all the business and success that they could possibly have. And I appreciate the fact that much like I think we talked about this before, talking about Devon and Bubba. And it's not often these days that I willfully try to compliment Bubba on anything, but um,
Yvonne, to be honest,
I
but carry on.
Yeah, I willfully. I mean, I appreciate people that recognize that they're just better together, and they
Mm,
can get further in this business by each other's side than solo. And I like the fact that these two young ladies have recognized that with each other, and they're genuine, feels like sisters and like best friends, to the point where commentary is like they almost come off as twins, but they're not, type of deal. A- And them recognizing all that and putting that stuff together, and like you said, over the last 10 years, they've been all over the place. They're like the feels like they're the like female duo version of Matt Cardona, right? Like they're
yeah, yeah,
gonna, go where the work's at and put in the work and do what only they can do the way they can do it. They just haven't done anything for me, in
yeah,
terms of, and they've been in TNA a lot. Um,
yeah,
but when I saw them here, I'm like, everything that they do, everything that they are, fits so perfectly here. I don't know how they didn't start here. Like this is the perfect type of deal, and like because so much of what they do is in that character, of it all, doing the little things, the poses and the exclamations and the nods to each other, and it just perfectly blends here. And I think they're a great example. This was a great example of that. Sometimes this is just such a difficult thing for the people in the IWC because they just want the people they like to just be all-purpose performers where they go anywhere and they're
yeah,
you know the punks, the CM punks of their live, but
yeah.
everybody don't work everywhere. They don't click
No.
they're just not gonna click. But here, oh, this is the glass slipper for Cinderella with these two.
It's wrestling perfection, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's just like because they're the only heels in the company. So therefore, they can run the table with every tag team in the company. And TJPW's got great tag teams. So they can have fantastic matches, which aren't going to be Ric Flair and Ricky Steamboat. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to
yeah,
watch it for a wrestling clinic, but God, it's going to be fun. So
exactly.
yeah, and I think there's an allergy to fun sometimes from a lot of wrestling fans as well. It was like, I suddenly posted this morning, a bunch of theatre kids are taking over pro wrestling, and it's like, no, it's always been like that. Because yeah, the tough guys were always there before, but equally, it's still theatre at its most base. It always has been, always will be, because it's not supposed to be a sport. As much as I love realistic wrestling more than anything else,
Yeah,
I don't. I know it doesn't always work for me. It doesn't. Not everything works for me in a certain environment. I think that's why I have bad reactions to certain people in certain companies. I think
yeah,
Jake Lee should be in Tokyo Joshi Pro Wrestling. He'd be perfect, except for the fact, he's a boy. But yeah, I think people like just, these there was a there was tweet the other day about Aussie Open being the greatest Australian tag team of all time. And it's
mm,
like TFK are right there. Hang on, whoa, slow down. But equally, the Kangaroos had a 30-year career doing barely nothing. Because they're what the inspiration are now, right? The fabulous Kangaroos pretty much invented being a heel tag team. Right? You go back and watch their old matches from the 60s and the early 70s. They bring out a flag, they sing the Australian national anthem, everybody hates them, they wind everybody up, they have a half-hour match where they cheat constantly, using the rules to their advantage, and then they leave and they make a ton of money. What's the inspiration do? Except for they don't sing the Australian national anthem. They do the same thing that Kangaroos have been doing for 30 years. And why wouldn't you?
yeah, man. Look, they are not, nor will they ever be the female time splitters. They know that, and they're not trying to be. And I
No,
appreciate
know your lane and
it.
stay there.
Exactly, exactly.
All right, then, let's move on to the main event. Sakachimu, that's the tag team of Miya Watanabe and Rika Tatsumi. They defeated Yuki Arai and Yuki Kamafuki in 50 minutes and 8 seconds in a blinding wrestling match to finish the show out. And I think that's kind of the tone they wanted to set of, look, hey, look at these last two matches. Or last three matches. We do comedy and we do fun. We've also got some great wrestling for you to see as well. And Watanabe is such a good babyface and represents the company as champion so well. because she dances and she sings with the Up Up girls, and then she goes out and have these beastly matches. She's absolutely fantastic and so ridiculously strong as well. She's one of the strongest women in Joshi. Only Big Hash kind of like comes close to her. So obviously Big Hash is a lot stronger than she is because Big Hash is stronger than most of men in pro wrestling in Japan. But she's absolutely incredibly fit, incredible cardio, wonderful character work, such a great all-round wrestler. And tagging with Tatsumi, who's been her long-time tag team partner. This was a fantastic way to end the show. What did you think of this one, Marcus?
Yeah, like you said, equally as good, man. This is more showing of that quality. Like as you said, it's variety across the board, which is a good thing because you want to have that.
Yeah.
You don't want to exhaust your audience early. You don't put on a 5-star to kick off the show and then it just tapers off as you go further along. I thought this was well thought out and paced. Like I say, you start them off good with the singles and kind of slowly do the comedy in the middle of it, then slowly trickle into this is your business right here. And this is 4 more women showcasing the depth and the quality that they have, as in the previous, match before last. So this was just good stuff. And yeah, like I said, commentary helped. Shout out to them. They were telling these stories and who these women are, and referencing what you said about her being one of the strongest in the company, and just we have there's such a great appreciation here for not just women's wrestling, but tag team wrestling in that regard as well. And these women they're so good at it. They're
Yeah.
so good at it, and it's really cool to see coming off of watching extensively the Sendai girls and with Marigold of it all. We got another company with these women tearing it up and doing so in a way that's translating in the states because unfortunately we aren't always as open minded as we should be over here. But just looking at this crowd, it gives me hope. Texas is a big place with what I'm sure a very deep and extensive variety of opinions on life in general, but it's really cool to see that they put on this event here in this space, and at times it almost felt like to a point that they had you know uh, Japanese crowd aspects to themselves
Oh yeah.
in terms of the
I know.
respect, which I greatly appreciate.
And I love the bit. Look, there was little bits as well, like Pom in the match with Pom, and she's running down Hyper Misao, and she obviously because she's a kid, she's made a car out of cardboard because she's a kid. But the car she's made out of cardboard is a Tesla, and the Tesla factory's in Austin. So it's just like this is just like very cool. It's just little bits and pieces that they've clearly thought about everything and put everything together in the best way to make the show work, and it's just fantastic.
Yeah,
And the next
and
show, okay.
yeah, and that's really the goal at the end of the day. Like in the in the world as being as crazy as it is, I never want to get so far out at sea that I watch something like that and I start coordinating it over the computer. Like, I don't want to get to that point. Like yeah, it's a cardboard box. No, it's a test. It's a Mercedes. It's exactly what she says it is. And yes, she
Yeah,
brought it to the match.
of
Yeah.
course she did. 'Cause she's four, and that's what she does, right? That matches her character perfectly. Just fantastic. Anywho, we're going to skip forward 4 days. We missed out two. There was another show in Austin, and there was a show in Dallas as well. But we're going to go to Houston, post Houston, which is the former Central Post Office of Houston, Texas. It's now an arts center and an exceptionally classy place to put a wrestling ring. With a spiral staircase in the background. It's one of the nicest places we've seen pro wrestling from, I think. We've
Yeah.
seen its dives.
Yeah, we see some dumps. It's like is like why is the ring post touching the ceiling almost? Like what is that?
Yeah. When did they clean the gym up before they put the ring up, or was that already is that just part of
Oh man.
yeah. It's a baseball stadium. Is it also a ballroom? Oh yes, it is a ballroom. Anyway, yes, we have seen wrestling in some dumps because we watch all kinds of wrestling. I've been to some wrestling in some dumps as well. Anyway, this show was 416 in attendance. Obviously, without South by Southwest there, you haven't got that captive audience. But equally, Had loads of sponsorship for this show. Like local merchandise suppliers were sponsoring the show, who do all the TJPW merch, and there was other sponsors as well. So clearly they have worked out the business of this, because taking a whole crew to an entirely different country,
Yeah, man.
and no offense to your brethren, there's not particularly welcome to foreign workers right now. Not your fault, obviously. Yeah, that's quite the undertaking, and the fact that they managed to get all of this done is incredible, I think.
Yeah, it's nice to see the advertisements outside of the ring and not done in 50 commercials back to back.
Or on a ring mat so small you can't see them.
Exactly.
Yeah. Anywho, this was a smaller ring as well, noticeably smaller ring. They run a 20-foot ring in TJPW in Japan. Obviously, most of your local indies don't run a 20-foot ring because they're trying to make money. And therefore, the bigger the ring is, the less seats they can put in the building. It tends to be around about a 15-foot, or I think this was probably around about a 15-foot. My favorite rings were the old British rings that were 8-foot in town halls. Like if you fell over, you touched the ropes. They were hilarious, as you can imagine, and bred a specific type of wrestling, which is World of Sport Wrestling. Anyway, we'll come back to this show. The show opened with Vert Vixen and Yuki Aino going up against Shinya Suzuki and Suzume, 10 minutes and 26 seconds. There was a little bit of local talent on these shows. Obviously, usually like touring shows. If you go to a British New Japan Pro Wrestling show, there is a bunch of British wrestlers on that show because they have to fill the show out. Not so much on this show. They kind of kept it to the new TJPW regulars and people who've been in TJW before, or people who are going to go back to TJPW on a regular basis, like the inspiration. But here, Vert Vixen has quite a few trips to Japan to go wrestle for TJPW. And again, she fits in like hand in glove with this particular crew. A fascinating opener, which is high paced and high offense. What did you think of this one, Marcus?
I dug this. The venue really helped this as well. To your
Yeah.
point, like it looked cool. Like the audience kind of be like going, all the way up and down the staircase or whatnot. The wrestlers coming down the stairs, like because it kind of reminded me of sometimes what happened over here, and I think it mostly happened over Mania weekend, where they'd have some of these shows in the malls.
Yeah.
So that that helped. And yeah, they just kicked this off with some quality um tag team stuff. We'll get to some more of the comedy stuff later, but this was some good stuff, and shout out to the ref as well. Um
Mhm.
on this. So yeah, this was great. Again, telling more of the story with Suzume, and then um got introduced to Yuki and Burt Vixen, which I
Mhm.
always interested in me to kind of see the American wrestlers mixed in with the Joshi shows, because I always be waiting to see what their names are gonna be.
Yeah.
Uh, just the position to their counterparts' name. So this was cool. Bert um catches your eye. The name is interesting. She's bigger, and yeah, she's gonna be interesting to watch. I don't know if she's directly on the roster or kind of just got used for this show, but she's I think she's gonna be one to watch.
She wrestled for TJPW every year for the last 3 years. So she joined them in 2023. She ran, looks like she had one tour in 2023. She had one tour in 2024. So presumably she'll get at least one tour in 2025. Working holiday. But yeah, so that was really cool. But yeah, anything else you'd like to add, or shall we move on?
No, that's about it. They closed it out with the one they closed out with submission.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that was just some good stuff. I always appreciate that. But yeah, we can move on.
Speaking of submissions, Sakura Hattori defeated Mifu Ashida in 7 minutes and 25 seconds. This time we got to see more of the pom-poms from Ashida. However, she too fell to that reverse choke of Hattori's, which is a lovely, horrible-looking maneuver.
Yeah,
It's like,
it,
oh, let's put this on behind my back, and you can't see what I'm doing. That's grim. I like that. That's nice.
I
Somewhere.
appreciate stuff. because
Grizzled,
not a
blinking
lot.
screen, smiling in a gym. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, no, 100% agree. Not a lot of people, because it all works together. Not a lot of people always cater when they do character changes. Um, Different move aspects to go along with the character, and just to your point, the fact that they're doing a choke and we can't really see what's going on, but it's absolutely being effective.
Mm.
100% plays along to what she's doing, and it's great. And kudos to my fool who like I'm not like you got a submission, I got a submission. I always appreciate seeing the good chancery.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
that was really cool. But yeah, this is absolutely working for Tori. I don't think she got a winning streak across these shows.
Yeah.
Um, what you want to do when you're trying to really get to the meat and bones of a new character that's supposed to be intimidating. Like that's the worst thing when somebody do a character switch up and they suck more than they did before. It's like, what was that? Who booked this? Like what's like they got madder, but they got worse. Like what?
Christopher Jericho springs to mind. Anyway, yeah. Yeah, no, this was fun and kind of like put, it highlighted Hattori as well. You was right, because looking at her cage match period, a previous finisher was a second rope senton. So she's kind of like taking
Mm,
the risk out in the same process, being more
yeah.
focused, less risk, without being less entertaining, because she's a different kind of entertaining. So that's cool. I like that. Now we return to our usual shenanigans. Hyper Misao versus Raku.
Oh
8
man.
minutes and 39 seconds. This opened with Raku just leaving her pillow safely on the floor and then retreating to the commentary desk and hiding behind it. And Hyper Misao announced that she was very tired after all of her matches and needed to lay down. And that's where it all went wrong. And that was the start of the match. And it did not get less silly than that, but it was no less entertaining. 6.5 from the cage match users who who like a good serious wrestling match, but they'll have a laugh as well. This was fantastic. Just top level entertainment. What did you think of this one, Marcus?
You said it as equally silly, but as it was entertaining. And like I said, this stuff might not be my cup of tea, but I think it works here because of everything that's around it. Like I said, you don't want to you s- you certainly got you a bad booker if this is the last thing to end the show.
Yeah.
Um, but this perfectly fits here. This crowd very much played in well into it. Um, And if nothing else, what I definitely appreciate, particularly within this art form we always talk about, is the commitment to the bit. You
Yeah.
cannot do any of this if you're not committed to the bit. Like you have that to every last part of it. That's what's clicking right now so well um, with Danhausen for me, which is ironic because normally when people come to WWE, it's when the aspect of them tapers back for me.
Yeah.
But he's so committed to the bit and it's just blending so well with that particular thing. But yeah, here the thing with the pillow and her being on the mic and calling for it, she's on contact. It just all the way through from top to bottom. You have to be committed to the bit. So I appreciated that aspect of it. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Just big dumb wrestling fun, and there's nothing wrong with that. And this made me smile an awful lot just because it was so silly, but it's just so good, so well executed.
yeah, and let's be honest, being able to go to sleep anywhere is a gift. So
Next up, the TJPW Tag Team Championship champions Wakana Uehara and Yuki Kamifuki had a bit of a tune-up match as they were due to go up against the Inspiration at Princess of Princess. They defeated Kayla Capri and Mia Yamashita 12 minutes and 20 seconds. This is a proper wrestling match. This was again, this is like, we do that, but hey, look, we also do this. How cool are we? They are very, very cool. This was an interesting match. I've always seen Over Eats before as tag team champions. They are exceptionally good. Kyla Capri was new to me. She's a freelancer. She's been wrestling for 3 years. Comes out of WWE Developmental. She started with them in 2023, and has been wrestling for ACW in All Caribbean Wrestling as well as FRCW in, he says, looking in Austin, Texas, and Walker, Texas. Sorry, not Austin, Texas. So local talent having to try out, and obviously have a big reputation, obviously coming from WWE. But this was a lot of fun. What did you think of this?
Loved all aspects of this business. Picked up again. To your point, introduction to Kyle Capri as well. But she's very promising. We'll be looking forward to seeing more stuff from her. But this was just good stuff. You're in for when they do the trade of bulls and then do the standoff. Um, so that's always a key component here. But this was just good stuff. Particularly again, gotta pay attention to how they pace the shows and where they put matches and where. This was a great thing to come after the previous match and whatnot. 'Cause like I said, business picked up, and you also have title match implications coming off of this. Because we talked about with the tag scene, seems like it's heating up, and the inspiration, like you said, they're the only true heels, and they blend so well with this style and this presentation that they are legitimate threats across the board because they can go when they want to, and
Oh
they
yeah.
and they're so much in sync, which was
Mhm.
really cool here to see. These young ladies, particularly um, Yuki and Wakana, really flowed in here. So yeah, this is I'm digging what they're doing with these tag teams and looking forward to seeing how things shape out.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, semi-main event time, I think is intriguing. Is Pom Harajuku going up against Yuki Arai? Now, here's the thing. Yuki Arai is the #1 contender to the Princess of Princess Championship. She's challenging at the next pay-per-view. And they put her in a comedy match with Pom Harajuku. And there are very few kind of companies on earth that would go, let's risk our #1 contender in a match that isn't necessarily that serious. I realize it's a house show in Houston, but all of these things in the Wrestle universe, everybody watches them. But they put Arai in this match, and it's silly. At one point, Pom has hidden Yuki Arai's house keys in a vending machine. And that's how silly it was. But Arai doesn't come off looking any worse for it. She isn't brought down by Pom. Pom lifts her up and makes this match make sense. And makes this match make sense in the context of Arai facing up against Miyu Watanabe in 2 weeks' time for the big belt. I think this was an incredible piece of wrestling from that perspective. Yes, it's fun, but it didn't hurt anyone. It didn't make anyone look down upon anyone within the universe of what we're watching. It makes perfect sense because that's how Pom would think, and that's how the match works. So therefore, it works. And it's all the things we've been talking about. This universe of TJPW doesn't let you go. You're always in, right? You're buying into everything because of the way they presented it and the way you believe it. Even though we don't speak Japanese, we understand, we get it, we follow the story. It's a wonderful piece of pantomime and done exceptionally well. And Arrow was fantastic in this match, and Pom's fantastic in this match as well. What did you think of this one, Marcus? Because this is borderline for you.
Yeah, but I think this is probably the best example that we're going to talk about on these shows of what we was talking into, which I love the tangent that we went off into about the comedy of it all, because I think this is the perfect example of that. This does not work if one of them cannot go.
Yeah, absolutely
If
not.
Pom can't go and she really just has to do all the comedy stuff, and there's no um logical or real tangible offense from her, this is very one-sided and very okay. Let me go to the bathroom right
Yeah.
now because they're playing, particularly if you're a fan of Yuki and you really just wanted to see her do anything else. Um, no, like showed what she can do. It's just she wants to do it, and
Hmm.
sometimes you kind of have to be tuned into that. Um, but yeah, everybody played their roles perfectly. You have to have willing participants when you do stuff like this, because if you don't, it's going to become very apparent to the audience that like, okay, one of them is really just getting paid to do this, and they're going through the motions of it. So
Yeah. Yeah. It just works so well. Like everything fits into place perfectly. And yeah, it just makes sense. And it doesn't feel like out of place, even though Arai is going to be like main eventing Sumo Hall in 2 weeks' time, and she's in this match in Houston in front of 500 people doing this, and it doesn't feel wrong. It doesn't feel like forced. It doesn't feel like they're just trying to shoehorn a match in. It feels like they're doing, Pom's the banana peel, right? She's the thing that could catch you out on the way to the championship, and she could ruin your dreams right here and now because she's Pom and she's done it before. Even though
Yeah,
that's the way it works, and that's fantastic. Someone
yeah,
said, yeah,
and in some
TJPW
ways,
doesn't.
I mean, what could be
Sorry, Carol.
yeah, in some ways, what could be better prepped than for such a serious match and moment than somebody that is consistently as off-putting during a match as somebody like Pom, right? Like it kind of
Exactly.
almost gets you ready for anything if you care to look at it from that perspective.
Exactly. That's what makes it make sense. I think John, our friend on Blue Sky on Twitter, has pointed out. It said TJPW doesn't have heels, but it has Pom. So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's a great shirt.
yeah, that's fantastic. Main event time. Arisu Indo, Miyu Watanabe, and Riki Tatsumi go up against Mizuki, Shoko Nakajima, and Uta Takami. 16 minutes and 59 seconds. One of the best TJPW matches I've seen in the last couple of years. This was fantastic, and they were clearly happy to blow off this tour with a big finish. And this was a blast. They're just all exceptionally good, and they can all go, and they did. This was kind of like more close to a Japanese house show kind of finish when everyone's just kind of blowing off some steam and they're having some fun. This was exceptionally well executed, a really great wrestling match, and again shows the other side of TJPW. It's high drama, low risk, in the sense of we're not, like we said, the stakes aren't as high in terms of physicality, but the stakes are ever so high in terms of storytelling, and that's what this is about. It kind of perfectly puts it together in that sense. And I think, DDT is obviously the parent company of TJPW, but Dramatic Dream Team really sums up what TJPW do best of all. They are a dramatic dream team. They show off all of the drama in a pro wrestling match better than most crews do, and they don't need the bells and whistles to do it. They do it in a straight wrestling style with a lot of storytelling and a lot of media savvy young ladies who know how to look at a camera, and that's a talent in itself. I love watching this promotion, and this was a really nice way of blasting off the tour. What did you think of this one, Marcus?
Yeah, I mean, this being I found them, I just thankful that I can, I'm not jaded that I can't enjoy this, appreciate it, and see it for all of what it is. Because this really is the culmination of everything we've been talking about. Like this is
Mm.
the same amount of character and comedy work without sacrificing any of the quality of the wrestling. And a
Yeah,
lot of times we'll see something like this, and it ends up being a trade off. It's either or.
yeah,
You're either gonna get the comedy, you're gonna get the wrestling of it. But they do a great job, and I think this is probably the like you said, really the founding um functional narrative of TJP is the like you said the dramatic uh character work of it all. Like the impact isn't any less um effective because of the drama around it. You know,
mm,
so which is like I said, it's not always the easiest to do. You see people either they're undercutting it or they're overselling it. Now, few people find that sweet spot, like we were talking about with the heel work of it all. So kudos to them for being able to do that. And that's not only just about the people behind the scenes, but these women as well. Because some people, they just don't have the juice to be able to pull everything together like that. But these women are extremely talented. Like I said, committed to all their bits.
mhm.
And while everybody's running, it doesn't feel like anybody's crossing over into each other's lanes. You know.
No, absolutely not. This. It's a really well-rounded company, and it's really well presented, and everyone knows what they're doing and what they're trying to achieve. And that's hard work in a modern wrestling company. We've seen what happens when it goes off the rails.
Yes.
And TW seems like a steady ship all of the time. There always seems to be forward motion. I think possibly because of it's kind of like, you know, WWE doesn't really want indie wrestlers, right? They want athletes they can mold into being WWE superstars. And Tokyo Joshi Pro is very much in a similar vein. You join Tokyo Joshi Pro if you're kind of like in the idol business. You don't join it if you're in the wrestling business. And as a result of that, I think the in environment for the wrestlers is much more controlled, but it means you get safer wrestling, which can't bad. People cycle out. They do retire at 27, 28, 29 because they want to. They're not doing it forever.
Yeah.
And therefore you get a natural, like, it's a bit like the old days in, which I didn't like, was the fact everyone had to retire at 26, but certainly there's a retirement ceiling on TJPW wrestlers. And if you want to go be a pure wrestler, then there's places you can go, and there's plenty of ex-TJPW talent in Stardom and Marigold and Sendai Girls, right? So yeah, it's intriguing to me as it's such a different setup compared to the rest of Joshi, because even they don't even really play well with the rest of Joshi. Not that they dislike the rest of Joshi, but they're more likely to go and do guest slots for AEW and GCW than they are to go, say, do a super show with Stardom, because it's not the same audience and it's not the same style of wrestling. They've kind of bridged the gap that companies that have been around before them didn't do, in the sense of their idol wrestling, whereas previous companies had taken that label less than proudly, had kind of run a cropper because the other companies didn't want to work with them. Whereas TJPW kind of like, they work with DDT, that's their cross promotion. They work with AEW and GCW. They do things that are different to the way the rest of Joshi works,
Yeah.
and do it massively successfully as well.
Yeah, I mean I'm glad you kind of went off there, because playing off of that, I was going to ask you who, it's coming off our chat about the inspiration, and just like I said, feel like the glass slipper on the foot here. I was going to ask you who could you see, um, not at all too dissimilar from them, who we seeing maybe on mainstream and other shows, kind of blend well in TJPW. And when you brought up AEW, two of the names that immediately came to mind was somebody extremely versatile and had a hell of a year last year, but it seems to very much be on that downslope. We kind of saw with her naturally for the story, and that's Mercedes Monet. Um,
Mhm.
but even more than that, I'm looking at this and everything that you was talking about. I'm like, oh, this would be a weekend of heaven for Willow.
I think Willow has done some TJPW shows. I will have to look that up. I will in a second. Yeah, I think Rosemary from TNA would be ideal because she's character work, right? She's a great wrestler, but generally speaking, her entire kind of like the way she builds characters and stories, she would be
Yeah,
ideal for this situation. Um, Hikaru Shida has done work for TJPW because obviously there is a talent spot agreement between DDT and AEW, and part of that deal was Shida wrestling in TJPW. But she kind of just did Hikaru Shida. She didn't really do like traditional like TJPW stuff. I think possibly because they wanted somebody to have a match with Aja Kong who could really, really go. And Aja Kong and Hikaru Shida is a word. They've had some bangers down the years. Has Willow done TJPW? Career highlights. Career. Willow has wrestled for TJPW. She wrestled for TJPW last year. She wrestled on she wrestled Mia Watanabe at Ota City Gymnasium in the TJPW Grand Princess show last year. So exactly this time last year. So she has done a couple of those shows. And she wrestled for TJPW in 2022 when she was on the Ups. She did a tour for them. She tagged with Shoko Nakajima and Maki and Yuka Sakazaki as well. So yeah. Willow has also wrestled for Marvelous and Ice Ribbon. She's a Joshi veteran, if you will. And New Japan Pro Wrestling, which isn't really a Joshi company. It's a wrestling company. um, having reports, having read the reports of what happened at Secure Genesis today, it's barely a wrestling company. Yeah. What's your final thoughts on TJPW as a new experience, Marcus?
I dig it. I think it's a like you said, it makes the intention to fit happily in the middle, knowing its audience, never undercutting it, but never overselling it either. They don't, like I said, you're not gonna watch this and go, man, these women, went out there and put each other through the through the blender and then some. That's not what they do. That's not what they need to do. Um, Yet they still keep to maintain a certain level of quality that makes you appreciate it. Now, if you're way too jaded and you wake up with death matches on the brain, this is not going to be your cup of tea. Um, but as somebody who is greatly grown to appreciate, in a lot of ways, Joshi wrestling even more so than with the men sometimes, because they just seem to just be more fluid and effective and come off better with it. This was a pleasant surprise, and the fact that they did it in the States and it came off as well, because like I said, we could just really just be intentionally um closed minded over here.
Mm-hmm.
So I really appreciated the fact that, Houston really showed up and showed out. And like I said before, kind of at certain points had, kind of Japanese instances where it's like, okay, they really respected, they wasn't trying to get themselves over, none of this stuff. They really just sat there, appreciated what they watched and didn't be overbearing. They clapped when they needed to, and when they didn't, they just sat there and appreciated what they was watching. So yeah, this was great, and I'm glad that we live in a time where something like TJP W can exist and really succeed, with as much wrestling is out there now. So
Absolutely. Right then, that closes out our review of Tokyo Joshi Pro Wrestling. Next week, we'll be looking at Sakura Genesis from New Japan Pro Wrestling with my partner in crime, Christy. Where can we find you on the internet in the meantime, sir?
yeah, on Twitter complaining about the brass and the guy that owns it with everybody else. Um, at Paradox Kid, that's PARADOXKID. You can hit me up anytime. I'm always down to chat.
You can find me on Twitter and Blue Sky, Sheriff Lemonstar. You can find me on Instagram, Sheriff Lemonstar.tx. You can find the show Tjpw Show on Blue Sky, Twitter, and Instagram. And the next time you will hear the dulcet tones of Mr. Marcus Green will be when we are talking about David Finley in our part 2 of that series, which we have yet to record or watch yet. But thank you for the wonderfully kind comments about our first part of that series, which people really enjoyed. So we're glad you did, and we appreciate the feedback. If you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. If you're watching anywhere else, on SoundCloud, on Stitcher, iTunes, Spotify, yeah, you got a new theme tune on Spotify because I'm sick of Spotify blacklisting the show. Every time I post on Spotify, they don't like our theme tune because they think I don't have the rights for it, despite the fact every week I tell them I've got the rights for it, and they brought down a bunch of our shows. So you got a new theme tune. I'm working on a better theme tune, but I have to write the theme tune myself, and I have to have time to write the theme tune myself. So give me a minute, and I'll write you a new theme tune that's better than the one I wrote last time, which is a bit pants. But I had 10 minutes to get it done in, and then I wrote a theme tune. So there you go. I have 2 weeks off work now. I can write a new theme tune. In the meantime, thank you very much for listening to the Tjpw Show. Take care, and we'll see you soon. Bye.